Have you ever heard of this stuff called reverse transcriptase? Apparently it's this substance that the human body has that has the ability to convert mRNA into DNA. It's really interesting, and it's concentrated, especially in the female anatomy, like it's in their ovaries. Like, say, for example, you were injected with some sort of mRNA substance. There is a possibility that the reverse transcriptase in the human body could convert that mRNA into DNA, which would forever change the cells affected by that, the entire cell's life. I recently watched a video that had mentioned this reverse transcriptase and the possible ramifications or consequences of injecting an mRNA gene therapy into somebody where that mRNA could be transferred into DNA, forever becoming part of that person. And I just thought it was really interesting, right? I wonder what's going to happen. Now, the doctor in that video has some pretty dire predictions for how it's all going to play out. He predicts a big deal with sterility, stillbirths, generally a much lower birth rate for humanity going forward because of these changes. But when you start getting into conspiracy talk and following a few rabbit holes down and you connect a few imaginary dots with invisible lines, there are other possibilities. I've always been kind of interested in like sci-fi stuff, like nanotech. So I mean, I've looked into it a little bit. Like, I'm obviously no scientist, but I have a casual interest in a little bit of self-education. And it's kind of interesting because it's kind of been advancing pretty good the last couple of years. And when you look up what they actually make the nanotech out of, like, what are the little nano machines made out of? It's this substance called graphene oxide. And, you know, that might sound familiar because if you take a look on Google, you will see that it is also one of the ingredients listed in the current round of vaccines. And the amount of that, because it is used in other vaccines, obviously, but there's more of it in these current vaccines than any other. Kind of weird, right? I am pretty sure that if you are on TikTok or any other social media, you have seen the way that all of them have been blowing up about this organization called the WEF, the World Economic Forum. And the guy that runs it, the founder, Klaus Schwab, who kind of looks like a supervillain, and when you look into what he's all about, he starts to sound like one too. If you want to do a little bit of rather unsettling internet research, you can take a peek into how many of the world's leaders, you know, people that were elected by nations to represent the country and the best interests of its people, actually have allegiance to a globalist organization that doesn't believe in borders or countries, believes in a one world government and a future where you will have nothing and be happy. It is basically the real world Cobra or Hydra. It's an organization that has planted operatives, representatives into the governments and other positions of authority all over the world. In any case, his top science advisor, I guess, he is in this interview that I watched a little while ago, and he's talking about how he has plans for the human race to be entirely programmable animals, where there's no such thing as privacy. They can see into your thoughts, they can control your thoughts and your behavior, and anything about your biology, generally. Which I found fucking terrifying. Now, see, me putting all these pieces together in my little sci-fi brain, we've got this mRNA gene therapy that we were told for 2 years would not affect your DNA, but it turns out there's a substance that your own body produces that means it might. And then you've got this other substance that they were trying to downplay for the last 2 years also that's in these vaccines, which is in other vaccines, but it's way more in these ones. And it's also a substance that is electromagnetic reactive and is used in nanotechnology. And I mean, putting these pieces together, connecting those invisible lines with the imaginary dots, it's just like, is that how they form the operating system by which they manipulate your biology and your psychology and your perceptions of the world? That kind of makes you think of that whole you will have nothing and you'll be happy thing a little bit different, because if they are literally controlling your thoughts and your feelings and your perceptions of the world, you may literally have nothing and still be happy while they have everything. This science advisor is also of the opinion that a large portion of the people on Earth are useless, and it would be better off if most of them just kind of weren't around. It kind of seems to me that when you take into account his comments about how most people are kind of useless and shouldn't be around, and how in the future he sees humanity as something that is an easily hacked animal, where there's no sense of privacy or even control over your own thoughts, and you have to assume that he means like the rest of humanity, not the upper crust, not the elites, not the ones that are actually running the show. And what this inevitably is going to lead to is a two-tiered society. You know, the whole Animal Farm thing, where everyone's equal, but some are more equal than others. There's going to be a real humanity, and then there's going to be a second-class slave caste of humanity. But they'll be happy slaves. Slavery isn't evil just because people weren't enjoying themselves. Now, I don't know how many of you have cracked a book and looked into history or how far, but generally speaking, when you create a two-tiered or segregated society, it is both evil and stupid. Even without all the paranoid sci-fi bullshit.